Hello, my name is Mike Zahari, and this is Sunday service coming to you from the Mission of Riverdale, 308 Broadview, Church of Scientology. I'm going to start with something a little different today, and then the sermon is going to be rather long just because of the content of it. So we'll best be on to it. Here we go. When a culture has fallen away totally from spiritual pursuits into materialism, one must begin by demonstrating they are each a soul, not a material animal. From this realization of their own religious nature, individuals can again come to an awareness of God and become more themselves. All right. So the talk today is about confusion and control. And I'm going to do this particular lecture just because there are so many things in society today that seem to buffet you about like a leaf in the wind. What is truth? What is not truth? Who do I believe? Certainty of self. It can be a confusing time. So the lecture today, or the sermon today, is going to give you some tools that you can sort of use to steer a more sane course. Okay? So here we go. All difficulties are fundamentally confusions. Given enough menace, enough unknown, a man ducks his head and tries to swing through it blindly. He is being overcome by confusions. Enough unsolved problems add up to huge confusion. Every now and then on his job, enough conflicting orders bring the worker into a state of confusion. A modern plant can be so poorly managed that the entire thing appears to be a vast confusion to which no answer is possible. Luck is the usual answer one resorts to in a confusion. If the forces about one seem too great, then one can always rely on his luck. By luck we mean destiny, not personally guided. When one turns loose of an automobile wheel and hopes the car will stay on the road by luck, he's often disappointed. And so it is with life. Those things left to chance become less likely to work themselves out. One has seen a friend shutting his eyes to the bill collectors and gritting his teeth while he hopes that he will win at the races and solve all of his problems. One has known people who handled their lives this way. Indeed, one of Dickens, Charles Dickens, great characters had the entire philosophy of waiting for something to turn up. But luck, while we grant that it is a potent element, is only necessary amid a strong current of confusing factors. If one has to have luck to see him through, then it follows that one isn't any longer at his automobile wheel, and it follows too that one is dealing with a confusion. A confusion can be defined as any set of factors or circumstances which do not seem to have any immediate solution. More broadly, a confusion in this universe is random motion. If you were to stand in heavy traffic, you would be likely to feel confused by all the motion whizzing around you. If you were to stand in a heavy storm with leaves and paper flying by, you would be likely to be confused. This can be a similar thing with who's right, who's wrong, which government is out for your best will, what laws being passed, what restriction, are these all confusion? They create a confusion. It's random motion. It has to do with your civil rights and liberties as well. Okay? Is it possible to actually understand a confusion? Is there any such thing as an anatomy of confusion? Yes, there is. If, as a switchboard operator, you had 10 calls hitting your board at once, you might feel confused. But is there any answer to the situation? If, as a shop foreman, you had 3 emergencies and an accident all at the same time, you might feel confused. But is there an answer to that? A confusion is only a confusion so long as all particles are in motion. A confusion is only a confusion so long as no factor is clearly defined or understood. You need a solid point of reference. So we're going to work on how that's gotten. Confusion is the basic cause of stupidity. To the stupid, all things except the very simple ones are confused. Thus, if one knew the anatomy of confusion, no matter how bright one might be, he would be brighter. If you have ever had to teach some young aspirant who was not too bright, you will understand this well. You attempt to explain how such and so works, and go over it and go over it and over it, and then you turn him loose and he promptly makes a complete botch of it. He didn't understand, or he didn't grasp it. You can simplify your understanding of his misunderstanding by saying very rightly, he was confused. 99% of all education fails, when it fails, on the grounds that the student was confused. I'm sure you'll have reality on that. The courses and curriculums are taught to the greater number, and the individuals understand at different rates. So consequently, things get left. They become confusions. Carrying on. And not only in the realm of the job, but in life itself. When failure approaches, it is born, one way or another, from confusion. To learn of machinery or to live life, one has to be able to stand up to confusion or to take it apart. We have in Scientology a certain doctrine about confusion. It is called the Doctrine of the Stable Datum. If you saw a great many pieces of paper whirling about a room, they would look confused until you picked out one piece of paper to be the piece of paper by which everything else was in motion. In other words, a confusing motion can be understood by conceiving one's thing to be motionless. In a stream of traffic, all would be confusion unless you were to conceive one car to be motionless in relationship to other cars and to see others in relation to that one. Hopefully that's you driving your car. The switchboard operator, receiving 10 calls at once, solves the confusion by labeling, correctly or incorrectly, one call as the first call to receive her attention. The confusion of 10 calls all at once becomes less confusing the moment she singles out one call to be answered. The shop foreman, confronted by 3 emergencies and an accident, needs only to elect his first target of attention to start the cycle of bringing about order again, picking one. Until one selects one datum, one factor, one particular in a confusion of particles, the confusion continues. The one thing selected and used becomes the stable datum for the remainder. This is your choice. You pick it, you decide, things align to that. Any body of knowledge, more particularly and exactly, is built from one datum. That is its stable datum. Invalidate it, which means by which is meant to refute or discredit, and the entire body of knowledge falls apart. Now, let's take an example here of somebody who was adopted. And so they've gone through their life and they've always assumed that their mother and father were their birth parents. And then one day they decide, or they find out that they were adopted and their parents weren't their actual physical parents. They didn't give them birth. And at this particular point, his relationship to his parents starts to get on shaky grounds until he realizes that parenting and giving birth are not the same thing. The people who adopted him did become and were his parents, at which point that now again becomes a stable datum. But for the moment, if you assume that just giving birth immediately makes you a good parent, I'm sorry, it's not always true. Could be, should be, but in this instance, that's not, the two don't correlate, okay? So you can see how a stable datum could get shaken like that. I'm going to carry on. A stable datum does not have to be the correct one. It is simply the one that keeps things from being in a confusion and on which others are aligned. So you pick it. It doesn't, you can find out later that there are better stable datums, but you have to pick one to have others align Otherwise, it is a confusion. And usually the fact of you picking one and things aligning allows you to inspect the situation more to come to better choices for stable datums. That just seems to be the way it goes. Now, in teaching a young aspirant to use a machine, he failed to grasp your directions. If he did, because he lacked a stable datum. One fact had to be brought home to him first. Grasping that, he could grasp others. One is stupid then, or confused in any confusing situation, until he has fully grasped one fact or one item. Confusions, no matter how big and formidable they may seem, are composed of data or factors or particles. They have pieces. Grasp one piece and locate it thoroughly. Then see how the others function in relation to it, and you have steadied the confusion and related other things to what you are grasping. You will soon have mastered the confusion in its entirety. So if we take, say, a clerk in a store. So this is a new person. There's a lot of product. There's a lot of prices. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of other people who seem to know what they're doing. There's a lot of motion. So what's your stable datum? What's the thing that aligns everything? Well, if you were to look at it as a store clerk and you were to say, okay, what my job is to satisfy a customer with a product that they like with service sufficient that they would refer us to other people. Say that was your stable datum. Then everything else falls into line around that stable datum. Like, rather than, what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do now? If you have that as a purpose, then everything drives along that line. Things become less confusing. Okay? That's just an example. In teaching a boy to run a machine, don't throw a torrent of data at him and then point out his errors. That's confusion to him. That makes him respond stupidly. Find some entrance point to his confusion. One datum. Tell him this is a machine. It may be that all the directions were flung at someone who had no real certainty, no real order of existence. This is a machine, you say. Then make him sure of it. Then make him feel it, fiddle with it, push it. This is a machine, tell him. And you'd be surprised how long it may take, but you'd be surprised at how well his certainty increases. Out of all the complexities he must learn to operate, he must know one datum first. It is not even important which datum he learns first, beyond that it is better to teach him a single basic datum. You can show him what it does, you can explain it to him, the final product, you can tell him why he has been selected to run this machine, but you must take one basic datum clear to him, or else he will be lost in a confusion. Now, if we take, say, a young child with a new bike, two-wheel bike. So he's graduated from a three-wheel bike where he doesn't have to really worry too much about keeping his balance, and he knows he's now learned pedals, so he knows that he can propel the thing. Now he gets on a two-wheel bike. So a two-wheel bike is pretty unstable. So what do? We put training wheels on, and then he learns how to pedal, and then we move the training wheels up a little bit more, and he learns how to pedal and get a little bit of balance. And then we finally remove the training wheels, and he can now move forward. So we've done this step by step. We've given him certainties and stable datums each of the way along, and because we have, he can move to the next step. If you take the bike without training wheels to somebody who's never been on a bike, sure shooting, he's going to fall and he's going to scuff his knees. He's not going to like or use the bike. It's an evil thing, which it isn't, but you didn't teach him the stable datums of progression towards a skill being attained. All right? Less confusing if you do it that way. I'm going to carry on. Confusion is uncertainty. Confusion is stupidity. Confusion is insecurity. When you think of uncertainty, stupidity, and insecurity, think of confusion, and you will have it down pat. What then is certainty? Lack of confusion. What then is intelligence? Ability to handle confusion. Life does present confusions, so you better know how to handle them. What then is security? The ability to go through or around or to bring order to confusion. Certainty, intelligence, and security are lack of or ability to handle Confusion. You either have it or you don't have it. And that doesn't mean it's an innate thing. You can learn it. I don't want you to get the idea that you're confused and that's just it. That's the lot of your life. That's not true. That's not true at all. How does luck fit into confusion? Luck is the hope that some uncontrolled chance will get one through. Counting on luck is an abandonment of control. That's apathy. There's always one aspect of something that you're in that you can control. It may not be large, but it's a start point. And if you grasp it and control it, then you can control something else. And if you control each of those points and nail them down, then they become stable data. And you can build something with that. Okay? Carrying on. There is good control and bad control. The difference between them is certainty and uncertainty. Good control is certain, positive, predictable. Bad control is uncertain, variable, and unpredictable. With good control, one can be certain. With bad control, one is never certain. A foreman who makes a rule effective today but not tomorrow, that would be uncontrolled. Who makes George obey but not James is exercising bad control. In that foreman's wake will become uncertainty and insecurity, no matter what his personal attributes may be. So the guy may have traits that are good, but it's his ability to keep things sane for others that we're talking here. This is the control aspect, okay? Because there is so much uncertain, stupid control, some of us begin to believe that all control is bad. But this is very far from true. Control is necessary if one would bring about order into confusions. One must be able to control things, his body, his thoughts, or at least to some degree to do something, whatever. Now, if we look in society, there are certain individuals that we just immediately assume have good control. Police officers, firemen. Situation occurs. There's confusion. There's a lot of confusion. Life is on the line. So a policeman comes on the scene, fireman comes on the scene. Now a fireman and a policeman who's got good control and positive control, he can get people to do things very willingly. Not a problem. Not a problem, and the situation comes to an end. But if he doesn't have good control, before very long, somebody else is going to step in and take it over. But we assume, and they most often do, have very good control. A confusion could be called an uncontrolled randomness. Only those who can exert some control over that randomness can handle confusions. A teacher who's a good teacher does that. The randomness can be in the student's mind as to confusions of, what is she talking about now? I don't understand it. I don't get it. So then the teacher steps in and handles the random confusions to where now it all aligns again and the student is winning. Those who cannot exert control actually breed confusions. The difference between good and bad control then becomes more obvious. The difference between good and bad here is degree. A thorough, positive control can be predicted by others. Therefore, it is good control. A non-positive, sloppy control cannot be predicted. Therefore, it is bad control. Intention also has something to do with control. Control can be used for constructive purposes or destructive purposes. You will discover that when destructive purposes are intended, bad control is used. Thus, there is a great deal to this entire subject of confusion. You may find it rather odd for confusion itself is to be used here as a target, but you will find that it is an excellent common denominator to all that we consider evil in life. And if one can become master of confusions, his attention is freed for constructive activity. So long as one is being confused by confusions, all he can think about are destructive things. What he wants to do most is to destroy the confusion. So let us then learn how to destroy confusions. And this, we find, is a rather simple thing. When all particles seem to be in motion, halt one and see how the others move in according to it, and then you will find less confusion present. With one adopted as a stable datum, others can be made to fall in line. Thus, in emergency, a machine, a job, or life itself can be viewed and understood, and one can be free. So, it's not always easy, because sometimes the confusions are really large. But pick some part of it that you can be sure of, and have it as the stable datum that other things revolve around or interrelate to, and work from there. And then you'll find better or bigger things that you can put your hopes on, or put your point for control, point of reference as you're sorting out the confusion. Okay? Life doesn't have to be confusing. You can solve it. And unfortunately, what you're going to do is you're going to go looking for other bigger confusions, because they are challenges. So you might as well win at them. Okay? All right. So there's more written on this particular subject in a book by Mr. Hubbard called Problems of Work. It's something very interesting. You might want to check it out. Have a good day.